The Darklords have a long and storied history in the game. From humble beginnings emerged the first Darklord. No, not that one. Ah, that's the one. The original Darklord monster was released all the way back in 2003 with Mary the Fallen One in Labyrinth of Nightmare. Though not yet a Darklord in name, Mary set the foundation for what would become an eventual rogue darling, rich with lore twisted into each piece of art and card mechanic their forsaken aura would touch. Mary was followed by Nurse Reficule the Fallen One as a promo card for Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Tag Force Revolution in 2007, creating the incredibly gimmicky and infuriating Nurse Burn deck, while still not settling into her status as a Darklord. Our first true Darklord was released in Phantom Nightmare 1 year later in February of 2008. Darklord Zerato stands as a bridge between the somewhat lost direction of the lore contained in the Fallen One monsters and what the Darklords would eventually become. Zerato exists in multiple forms throughout the game, the Darklord variant being an inverse of Archlord Zerato. This light counterpart is based on the Archangel Zerachiel, an angel tasked with the leading of souls to their judgment. Zerachiel has no stories surrounding him regarding any sort of fall from grace, but Konami provides a reason for the presence of this Darklord through a few unique design choices. The entire Zerato line stems from one card, Warrior of Zera. If he chooses the righteous path, he will rise through the ranks, eventually becoming Archlord Zerato. But in the event he chooses a path of greed and corruption, he will be led to a different fate. There are multiple destinies awaiting Warrior of Zera depending on which faction he decides to side with. His flavor text explains the battle taking place in his mind, wanting desperately to reach the sanctuary that would allow him to ascend, while fighting the temptation offered by the evil fiends. Each possible outcome is depicted in a series of cards. He could turn towards ritual and transform himself into the mighty Zera the Mant. He could enter Pandemonium and embrace the power of Mazera Deville. His desire is to ascend to the rank of Archlord and sit alongside God at the sanctuary in the sky. But if temptation guides him, he could be the force that desolates the sanctuary and assists in bringing about the end times. This is the fate we see in the art of Darklord Zerato, as the sanctuary sits in ruin at the hands of the failed warrior. The next wave of Darklord support would come in 2010 in the form of 3 YCS prize cards. Asmodeus, Superbia, and Ide Array were initially printed as super rares for the 2nd and 3rd place finishers, and ultra rares reserved for the champion. Darklord Desire also released in 2010 as a promo card in Volume 5 of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga. His name refers to the sin of greed or covetousness, and makes for a clever tongue-in-cheek taunting of the player base over the fact that his brethren would only be obtainable by those willing to run the gauntlet of a YCS and come out victorious, a feat that requires an obsessive drive to conquer. We're now 6 cards in, and if you were to stop and assess everything contained within the archetype at this moment, you would be hard-pressed to find any semblance of a functioning deck, let alone a discernible playstyle. And this would remain unchanged until the release of Destiny Soldiers, introducing the first cohesive support for the deck 6 years later. The direction of the aesthetic design of this deck would change drastically alongside this more precise playstyle. The original Fallen One monsters, now renamed to Darklord Mary and Darklord Nurse Reficule, are based on a strange concept. Mary is constructed on the idea of a corrupted version of the Virgin Mary, a prominent biblical figure known to be without sin. This twisted depiction of Mary is used to communicate the redemption possible to sinners with Saint Joan, an old fusion monster requiring forgiving maiden and Darklord Mary to summon. Here, Saint Joan acts as a symbol for the good that can be done if one were to just turn to God for guidance. Reficule has a similar origin, likely being based on Phoebe, a nurse in the Bible described as having exemplified early Christian ideals of charity and selflessness. But, once again, she has been corrupted by sin and now exists in this new demonic form. These 2 cards alongside Zerato create this as above so below motif that exists throughout the rest of the archetype. An entity that exists as a pure and righteous force on earth or above is shown in similar form, but now representing the opposite. The name of Nurse Reficule is a further example of this concept. Reficule is just Lucifer written backwards. The evil hides in plain sight. The themes present in the following card art hammer this idea home, with the new wave of support being based on known demons or gods from various religions encouraging the sins of man. The prize cards are our first monsters emblematic of demons ripped straight from religious teachings. Asmodeus, the most famous of the 3, is a demon bound to the deserts of Egypt by Archangel Raphael in the Book of Tobit, an apocryphal Jewish work that describes the ways in which God tests the faithful. He is the demon of lust, and fell from heaven after falling in love with a human woman, Sarah, before proceeding to end the lives of each of her 7 husbands. This tirade would only end after Tobias, son of Tobit, is able to lure the demon into imprisonment with the help of Archangel Raphael. His fascination with destroying the sanctity of marriage is further demonstrated in stories of him tempting husbands to cheat on their wives before they are able to consummate the holy union. He is also widely considered to be the general of the devil's army. Some of these aspects of Asmodeus are reflected in his effects. His inability to be special summoned from the deck or graveyard resembles his current imprisonment, while his ability to generate tokens upon being destroyed symbolizes his raising of an army. And I don't really blame Konami for leaving out that other part. Ide Array looks to be based on two different but similar spirits. Array were the female spirits of curses. In Greek mythology, it was believed that the dead could place curses on those responsible for their death. Array are closely related to Arenes, commonly known in English as Furies. In the Iliad, they are invoked as earthly demons that take vengeance on oathbreakers. This card's name is likely based on these two spirits, though Ide only slightly resembles any of the forms of the name used for furries throughout history. Superbia is the Latin word for pride, which is widely considered the worst of the 7 deadly sins and is the most prominent character trait of the devil. C.S. Lewis writes in Mere Christianity that pride is the anti-God state, in which one's ego and the self are directly opposed to God. It is through pride that the devil became the devil, and through pride from which all other vices are born. This next group of monsters I've dubbed the Idolatry demons. I've named them as such because they're all based on gods from religions outside of Christianity, and they don't have much of a reason to be portrayed as evil outside of being false gods that draw the lost away from the Almighty, another one of the 7 deadly sins. Darklord Ixchel is based on the 16th century Mayan aged jaguar goddess of midwifery and medicine of the same name. Her 2 domains were birthing and healing, and were celebrated by ancient physicians and shamans with a great feast during the month of Zip, the third of 18 20-day months in the Mayan calendar. Women seeking to assure a fruitful marriage would make a pilgrimage to the island of Cozumel, the second most important religious site behind Chichen Itza, where they would visit the sanctuary of Ixchel. There, a priest hidden within a large statue would provide oracles. To the north of Cozumel sits an island, dubbed the Island of Women by Spanish explorer Hernandez de Cordoba on account of the island being filled with statues honoring many Mayan goddesses, including Ixchel. The only surviving mythological story about Ixchel describes her having 13 sons alongside her spouse Itzamna, a creator god of whom little is known about. 2 of these sons would become the creators of the heavens and the earth and all that reside therein. I've also seen mention of this card possibly being inspired by Ixtab, a goddess whose origin is largely speculative. The Hanging Woman is thought to be a deity in charge of ferrying souls of those that chose to remove themselves from this life into the afterlife, though this is based off of a single carving found within a piece discussing the lunar eclipse, and has no further context to back up the claim. Some scholars believe that this deity is more likely to be related to hunting, as snares were a largely used hunting technique at the time. The dark story of Ixtab is propagated mostly by the people of the Yucatan Peninsula, and seems rooted in La Ixtabe, a demon that appears as an attractive woman that uses her looks to lure in and prey upon young men. This detail does line up with the appearance of her Darklord counterpart. Darklord Tezcatlipoca, the Smoking Mirror, represents change and conflict in Aztec mythology. As is common with many gods from this time period, there is very little information on this entity from the source. The best I could find were the writings of Bernardino de Sahagún, a 16th century ethnographer that spent more than 50 years in the study of Aztec beliefs. He described Tezcatlipoca as existing in a gray area, being neither good nor bad. He brought down anguish and affliction, but also bestowed upon man wealth, power, and nobility. Darklord Nergal is based on a Sumerian god whose name translates to Lord of the Big City. Nergal is the god of afflicted death and is associated with war, death, and disease. He is often linked to Mars, which was associated with kidney disease in Sumerian theology, and is often referred to as the Lord of Kur, the Sumerian underworld. The remaining Darklords are all based on Christianity, either being referenced directly in the Bible or in some ancillary work surrounding the theology. Darklord Amdusk is based on Amdusias, the Great Duke of Hell. Amdusias appears as a unicorn but can shift into the shape of a man upon request. He is often depicted with a trumpet meant to symbolize his powerful voice. This also symbolizes his connection to sound and music, which he can produce from nowhere. This trick is often used as a psychological weapon by the demon. Darklord Nastin plays a central role in the Darklord story in-game. Nastin is based on Mastema, a figure named after the Hebrew word for hostility. In the Zadokite fragment and the Dead Sea Scrolls, 2 of the oldest known surviving full manuscripts of books that would eventually become part of the biblical canon, Mastema is known as the Angel of Disaster, the Father of Evil, and a flatterer of God. Although his name and titles make him out to be an adversary to God, In early texts, it appears he was an angel under God, and is sent to earth to test man before the Great Flood. After the flood has been executed and God is ready to destroy the demons on earth, Mastema pleads with God to allow the Nephilim to stay, leading man astray as they reach their judgment, fulfilling his role as the tester of man under God. The curious aspect of Mastema is that his status as an angel or a demon is not clearly defined in many texts. He seems to stand on some middle ground, attempting to perform the task set out for him by God, albeit with selfish intent. This story is explored in the artwork of some of the spells and traps we will discuss in a moment. Now, Darklord Yugioh is just a silly little guy. We're told as much in Jacques-Collin de Plancy's Infernal Dictionary, where he describes Yugioh as a demon of inferior order, with a flaming body and large eyes and ears. He is often depicted with a pan full of coals or hot poker, as he is tasked by Beelzebub to maintain the oil in the infernal boilers, made up from the blood of the damned. He claims Yugioh to be the inventor of fireworks and the art of frying food, which I believe makes this canonically a tool of the devil, and it makes sense. Darklord Morningstar and the first Darklord are both representations of Lucifer, Morningstar likely being a depiction of his initial fall from grace, and the first being his eventual embodiment as Satan. The name Morningstar is just a translation of Lucifer, being the Latin word meaning the morning star, and is in reference to his former position as the greatest of the angels in heaven. His fall is detailed in Isaiah 14, observing the splendor he once enjoyed before being cast down. It then outlines his plan to ascend back to heaven, building a new kingdom above God and replacing the Most High atop the throne. In Ezekiel 28, the dire nature of his betrayal is described with a sense of great despair. His creation is likened to that of precious stones and metal, his perfection unmatched. He walked sinless through the garden of God before wickedness was found within him. He became a violent sinner, prideful and corrupt. Because of this, God would throw him to the earth and light him ablaze as an example to mankind. All who knew Lucifer would now view him with disdain and disgrace. In the Bible, this event is described in Luke 10, wherein Jesus declared that, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." The first Darklord depicts Lucifer taking up his role as Satan the accuser. This event is shown to us in the art of Darklord Uprising, as Morningstar embraces the sin that has consumed him, guiding him to his new position opposite God. The remaining Darklord spells and traps detail other important events in this story. Darklord Rebellion is the moment God became aware of the betrayal of Lucifer and banished him from heaven. Here we see a white-clad morning star crowned by a golden halo. This is the first instance of us seeing the golden halo atop the head of an angel before morphing into a more jagged, red version of the same symbol. Yet another example of the as above, so below pattern. Banishment of the Darklords is an image of those that would follow Morningstar to Earth, as we can see Amdusk and Tezcatlipoca in a more pure form be cast down in a bolt of lightning, not unlike the scene described of Satan in the Bible. We once again see these two donning the heavenly golden halo moments before their fall from grace. Darklord descent is quite different from the previous two depictions. Asmodeus is descending from a dark ray of light, seemingly of his own accord. There's nothing to suggest why this would be the case in any card art or theistic mythology, so my best guess would be that this is actually a depiction of Asmodeus after the events of Witch's Strike, when the demons have succeeded in usurping the Almighty. Darklord enchantment is fairly nondescript, simply giving us the image of Ixchel, now standing, possibly performing a dance or ritual of some sort. If we were to take Ixtab as a possible source for the in-game counterpart, this is likely Ixchel attempting to lure in her next victim. Darklord contact begins to lead us toward my favorite part of this archetype. Here, Nastin is seen kneeling before a stairway to heaven that is barricaded by what appears to be the top half of a large stone cross. His purpose here is given to us in the Sanctified Darklord. In this card, Nastin is kneeling once again, this time at the foot of God, as he ceremonially pours water from the forbidden chalice atop his head. This act of repentance is portrayed through both the image and the name, with sanctified meaning to declare holy. Nastin would like to return to the side of God, and this would bring about the wrath of a new evil. The forbidden spells and solemn traps tell their own version of the story of Lucifer. The solemn trap cards have existed in the game almost as long as the game itself. Each card is characterized by a powerful negation effect in exchange for a sizable life point cost. Each depicts the same old man in white robes providing guidance to his flock. This is a depiction of God, further proven by the OCG name replacing solemn with gods. Our first clue about this story is in Solemn Scolding, or God's advice in the OCG. Here we see God reprimanding a girl kneeling before him with a familiar flower adorning her hair. Two other maidens stand to each side of God, appearing nervous for their friend. The girl on the receiving end of this tongue lashing is the same girl seen in the forbidden spell cards. Each of the forbidden quick play spells details the theft of a holy treasure by the accused girl in scolding. The items she steals are all references to iconographic biblical treasures in Christianity. Forbidden lance is the holy lance used to pierce the ribs of Christ during his crucifixion. Forbidden chalice is the cup of Christ used at the Last Supper. Forbidden dress is the holy tunic thought to have been worn by Christ before his crucifixion. And forbidden scripture is the original copy of the Bible. This art is also the only one to depict a modern-style room, whereas the rest appear to take place in the same location somewhere near Sanctuary in the sky after she has escaped with her prize. Unbeknownst to her, God had always known of her misdeeds and was giving her an opportunity to change her ways. We can see the Almighty in the doorway on the left-hand side of the picture, watching with disappointment. This is what led to the situation portrayed in Solemn Scolding. Master Guide 4, one of a series of official card storylines produced by Konami, gives us a brief telling of the order of events pertaining to the holy treasures. The holy maiden is first seen drinking from the chalice after having stumbled upon the treasure room one day and deciding to take it for herself. The joy she gained from possessing the artifact caused her to seek for more. She would sneak back into the room 3 more times. Her second theft was performed when she took the lance, capable of slicing through any type of demonic power. The third was the dress that could ward the wearer from disasters and destruction. She went back a 4th time, believing she had avoided detection by God. On her final trip, she attempted to make off with the scripture, a book of prophecies written by God himself. She was found out and banished from heaven for her sins. The aftermath of Solemn Scolding can be seen in Solemn Strike, or God's Announcement. This is when God strikes her from heaven, beginning her transformation. Condemned Maiden is the form she takes immediately after being cast down. She appears fearful of the divinity of the forbidden treasures that now imbue her body, knowing that she cannot return to the side of God until she atones for her sins and the power of the forbidden items subsides. At this moment, she has not gone completely astray. The worry worn on her face and the white still gleaming on the feathers of her wings suggest she is still grappling with what has become of her. However, rather than walk the path of atonement and return to God, she is consumed by this power and becomes Condemned Witch. We see a physical change in her appearance, as her skin grows a deathly gray. Her demeanor changes as well. She no longer appears frightened by her situation, but comfortable. A sinister smile is now etched across her face, and the world around her loses color. This is shown in the glowing white feathers now shifting to a drab black shade. The end result of this transformation can be seen in Witch's Strike. In a display of juxtaposition, this artwork resembles that of Solemn Strike, only this time Condemned Witch is in control as she unleashes a similar burst of lightning, felling God in the process. Upon completing her mission and taking the place of God, she commits one more theft, 2 of his children. With this final sin, she completes her transformation into Condemned Darklord. These 2 stolen maidens also exist as individual cards. Capricious Darklord is the girl to the right of God in Solemn Scolding, but now she is drawn to sit at the right side of Condemned Darklord. She now carries the burden of the sins of her new god, representing the gluttony shown by the condemned when committing theft after theft of the holy treasures. The reason for the condemnation of gluttony is that the gorging of the prosperous may leave the needy hungry. Likewise, by removing these divine relics from the hand of God, she is depriving humanity of the wonders that come with them. Indulged Darklord is the girl to the left of God in Solemn Scolding, she too now taking that same place alongside Condemned Darklord. She must carry the burden of the lust portrayed by the condemned along her quest for wealth and power, dragging them all down from heaven. Yet even still, she continues to yearn for more. Lust is considered the least serious of the 7 deadly sins. The unbridled desire for money, power, or any goal capable of corrupting one's mind is considered a faculty inherently present in the mind of man. This makes the thoughts of man a perfect target for the devil to exploit, being easily able to enslave the minds of those not wary of our natural imperfections. The symbolism present in these 3 cards is my favorite part of this archetype, the most apparent one being the formation of these cards when played on the field as rendered. If Condemned Darklord occupies the extra monster zone, her link arrows will point down and to the left and right zones beside her, placing any monster summoned there in the same position as God and the 2 maidens in Solemn Scolding. The backgrounds of Condemned, Capricious, and Indulged use rays of light to indicate that the 2 lesser Darklords would each flank their leader in a way mirroring that of the source art. Making these 3 separate cards adds an additional layer. When arranged as previously described, they form a triangle. In Christianity, this is considered a symbol of the Holy Trinity. The idea of an unholy trinity has also been put forth in multiple works. In Paradise Lost, it consists of Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Astaroth. Within the context of the Bible, it consists of Satan and his two beasts from the Book of Revelation, the Antichrist and the false prophet. In Yugioh, we have these three. The final piece of this story so far can be seen on Forbidden Droplet. This image once again parallels another familiar scene. This time, the sanctified Darklord is contorted as condemned Darklord stands triumphantly over Darklord Nastin, now bound before her, screaming in anguish. She avenges his betrayal of the demons with one final act of sacrilege as she performs her own unholy baptism, this time pouring vile water from a blackened and desecrated forbidden chalice. The impossible has happened. Condemned Darklord has won.